From the crossroads of the Ozarks, it's PID Radio. Welcome. I'm Derek Gilbert.
Hi, I'm Sharon Gilbert. Welcome to our back bedroom bunker. The one with the view of the crows on the lawn.
Yes, they are celebrating today. The sun is back out after a day or so of heavy rain here.
Yeah, very heavy. In fact, there are some, flood warnings around, but trust me, they don't affect us. But those of you who are living under a threat of bad weather or flooding or snow when it's not appropriate, Southern California.
Right. The Babylon Bees article was somewhat telling, although for the people who are snowed into their homes in the San Bernardino Mountains, which might include the Marzulis for all we know, that's where they live. Yeah, that's not a fun thing if you're not prepared for this, but for some places there, this is just not a random occurrence. So people like our friends in Montana, my mom from North Dakota, friends in Idaho, they're like, yeah, this is what we call winter.
Oh, I know. It was so funny, too, that the Babylon Bees said that those in Southern California were experiencing blankets of climate change.
Because that's in the story. That is in the story, the way it's being reported, at least in some outlets. Well, not here. Not here on the ridge in the Ozarks.
We love the ridge in the Ozarks. Hey, you know what? Just a little over a week from now, we're heading to Israel.
That is correct. And we've got a big announcement about that tour.
We do.
Yeah.
We'll make that
special
after
guest.
After the break. And we'll also talk about Build a Barn Better after the break. Many of you have helped out with that already.
We are amazed and
we
humbled.
are just really, really humbled. We know the Lord's got some sort of big plan for it. We know we can build the first phase, but because the Lord keeps having many of you help us out, we think maybe he's got something else in mind. So we can't wait.
Well, we keep praying for wisdom and discernment because we're not wanting to do, we just want to be good stewards of what's been entrusted to us.
You and I live pretty simply, to be honest.
We do, yeah. Between our two cars, we've got like 360,000 miles on our two vehicles now?
I know.
So.
We live on very simple fare, too. Beans, cornbread soup. Yay.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we dive into the content this week, please take a moment and make a note, if you haven't already, to download our app. Get our app because it gets you all of our content. This podcast, A View from the Bunker, which is now video and has been for now a couple of years. Our weekly broadcast program, Unraveling Revelation, and of course our weekly Bible study, which is the hub, really the heart of the whole thing.
It really is.
House
Plus
Fellowship.
the weekly blog that you put up there, which are excerpts from our books.
Yeah. Been going through a little section now for the last 3 weeks dealing with Nimrod and Babel. Where was Babel? Contrary to popular belief, it was not at Babylon, since Babylon did not exist in the days of Nimrod. And I explain why in the most recent articles. You'll find that in one of the tab there, the tab labeled blog. Oddly enough, on the app.
What?
Right there, all of those stories popping up.
There's one called More, too. A tab called More.
Go to the tab called More. That's where we hide all the secret stuff.
The More?
Yes, that's where we hide the more. And you go there, and there are other links to social media sites and other places as well. So,
do you know there's also an audio Bible on that app?
It really is full featured.
It is.
The developer, the company that develops this is called Subsplash. It's a Christian company. They developed this for churches to engage more closely with their congregations. But media ministries have found out, hey, this is a really good way of putting together our content. You don't need to just put video sermons up there. We can put our broadcast programs, we can put podcasts up there, and you can use it for a variety of things. But they've got a Bible app, a Bible module inside the app, and it has an audio version, so you can have it read the Bible to you in 5 different translations.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
I love that. Well, we are going to talk about things that are sort of bizarre. We're going to take an around the world tour of what's going on in the news this week. The top of the news for me this morning, you and I were talking about it right before we decided to talk into our mics. And that's this soldier who in 2020 was arrested for essentially giving away U.S. secrets to the enemy. Yeah,
Ethan Melzer is the young man's name. He's from Kentucky. He is described now as a former U.S. Army private, since when you betray the movements of your unit online to the enemy, they tend not to keep you in the service. They
tend
kick
to
you out.
court-martial you.
Right. And
He's
that's what's
been
happened.
sentenced to 45 years.
Mm-hmm. According to the report from Associated Press, he was charged with plotting a murderous terrorist attack on his unit. Kid is 24, and he's now going to be in prison until he's nearly 70.
Yes.
Which is sad.
It is sad because his lawyer said that the young man fell victim to a cult.
And his lawyer called it a ridiculous cult. Now,
yes. No, his lawyer doesn't understand.
No. This cult is called the Order of Nine Angles. It's the subject of a book by our friend William Ramsey, who has written extensively about Aleister Crowley,
mm-hmm.
about Damien Eccles,
mm-hmm.
the West Memphis 3 trial, and his most recent book, which was published in 2021, is titled Global Death Cult, and it's about the Order of Nine Angles. This was founded by a Brit by the name of David Myatt, or at least allegedly founded.
I was going to say, he's never admitted that his alternate identity is Anton Long,
mm-hmm.
but there are many who think it is.
Right, and that's what William concluded in his book.
Mm-hmm.
You can get that at Amazon. It's available in paperback and Kindle. It is a cult that believes that other satanic groups like the Temple of Satan, or rather the Satanic Temple,
mm-hmm.
really those guys are cosplayers.
And the Temple of Set.
The Temple of Set, which was the group founded by Colonel Michael Aquino. That they believe these guys are just play acting. They're LARPers,
right.
Live action role play. They see themselves as being truly serious about it. And I included a couple of paragraphs on this group in my book, The Second Coming of Saturn, because at the heart of their religion is something called the Tree of Word, W-Y-R-D. This is a modified tree of life.
Right. It's an old English word.
Mm-hmm.
No pun intended.
The tree of life in Kabbalah has 10 nodes. This one only has 7. And at the top of the tree, the top of this Kabbalistic tree, is Odin, the Norse Allfather,
mm-hmm.
who is identified with Saturn.
Mm-hmm.
These guys think that these other groups are just pretending to be Satanists, whereas they're serious about it. They want to put into practice what the Temple of Set and the Church of Satan, Anton LaVey's group, are playing at.
Absolutely.
Up to and including human sacrifice.
Now, yes, that's what's... I'm sorry, this is not a ridiculous cult,
no,
Mr.
It's
Lawyer.
a dangerous cult.
It is an organization that is neo-Nazi.
Mm-hmm.
It is Norse in much of its belief system.
Mm-hmm.
It was begun actually by a woman who was the mistress of the Welsh marches. She started these temples, and then very quickly this other gentleman came in who called himself Anton Long. Now, this organization considers itself inheritors of Blavatsky and Crowley. A lot of their belief system in the ages, the aeons,
mm-hmm.
is based on Blavatsky's belief. They're Aryan in their belief system. They believe that the Judeo-Christian religion, the Magian Nazarene influence,
mm-hmm.
is holding back the next age.
Right.
The next aeon.
And they need to engage in human sacrifice in order to release the power necessary to create a new, more evolved human species.
It's the very thing I write about in the Red Wing Saga, that blood sacrifice is essentially the engine oil that makes this war engine go and will lead to the emergence of Shemyaza
mm-hmm.
from the abyss. That's
right.
the whole idea, is eventually unlock the Watchers and let them out.
Mm-hmm.
Spoilers. But the idea that the Judeo-Christian belief system, that's the fallen realm. They want that gone.
That's why they spend so much time and focus on it, especially on eliminating the Jews. When you look at the number of adherents to Judaism in the world, it is not even among the top 10 most numerous religions.
Mm-mm.
I mean, you'd think that it is because
mm-hmm.
of all the attention that is paid to what Netanyahu's doing, or what Ben Gvir, his head of, what is his role?
He's like head of the police.
Yeah, I think so. It's under his purview anyway. What they're doing and what Israel is doing with the Temple Mount. attract so much attention from around the world. You think, okay, there must be just Jews everywhere. No, they're not. I mean, you've got more Jainists, more Zoroastrians than there are Jews in the world.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Yeah. In the article and I think it's yours as well, I'm looking at the one at Times of Israel. It ends with this paragraph that Melzer, this is the young man from Kentucky who was sentenced to 45 years, planned to join co-conspirators he met online to carry out a, quote, jihadi attack, unquote, that would cause a mass casualty event to provoke the United States into engaging in a foreign war that would cause mass bloodshed and terrible harm to the very country he'd sworn to protect. In other words, he wanted to get us involved in World War III.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think. And sadly...
Blood sacrifice.
Yes. Wars. I think it's one of the things that you and I talked about when we discussed the riders in Unraveling Revelation and elsewhere, that one of the side effects or the direct effects of these rides, and you and I believe it's been going on since Jesus was ascended to the throne, that as they go, they peak, then they sort of go away for a little bit, then they peak again, and it's like a waveform throughout history, that it's a lot of bloodshed.
Right.
A lot of bloodshed. And it's like the fallen realm need this blood to activate a portal or an event. And by that, I would conclude that they want Shemyaza out, or Shemyaza is using them to get out. But I would also argue, and I think you would too, that Satan is using Shemyaza to use them.
I agree. Shemyaza is the focus of the book, The Second Coming of Saturn. I believe that is who Saturn, Kronos, El, Enlil, Dagon is. He created this hybrid army, he and his co-conspirators from Mount Hermon, the Genesis 6 incident. But I think behind the scenes, you had this other entity, Satan, or the Satan, who was using him. A couple of years ago on the Bible's Greatest Mysteries, we talked to L.A. Marzulli about this and kind of speculated. Do you think Satan may have lured Shemyaza into doing this, playing on his ego? I argue in The Second Coming of Saturn that Shemyaza is the character in Isaiah 14 and Ezekiel 29, the character that through church history we have come to know as Lucifer. I think that's Shemyaza, not Satan. And I think Satan may have said, hey, look, if you do this, you'll create this army and you can take over the world. Because if I'm right in this, Ezekiel 28 describes this character in Eden as having every precious stone as his covering. And in the Septuagint, it matches the stones in the ephod.
Stones listed.
He may have been the high priest in Eden, this character, and now he's in the abyss. I
think that's so interesting, and it explains why he would be so close to the throne, was with the covering cherub.
Yeah, that's the other interesting thing, too, about Ezekiel 28. We assume he was the guardian cherub who covered, but when you read the Septuagint translation, which is based on older Hebrew texts translated before the birth of Jesus, he says, I placed you with the guardian cherub, and because of his pride and his iniquity, that was the sin that was found in him, the guardian cherub had to toss him out of Eden. So, yeah, he was close to the throne, but not close enough to get past the cherubim, the throne guardians.
It's so interesting. If indeed that was the way it was organized prior to Satan's rebellion, that this Chal ben Shakar, this entity, might have been an advocate for our elder brothers, what we call the angels, the Elohim, because we hadn't existed yet. Adam and Eve, I don't think existed, but Satan went from being the advocate to the adversary. He changed roles completely, did a 180.
And he still carried out that role through the Old Testament. When you read the Old Testament carefully, there are only a few mentions of Satan, and in every case, he is serving as sort of an adversary or accuser.
Yes, I'm glad you said that, because that role, I want to make sure people understood, he's not an advocate anymore.
No.
He left that when he decided, I'm more important than you guys.
Shifted from advocate to adversary.
Yes.
But he still had access to the throne of God in Job 1 and 2, Zechariah 3, where he's accusing the high priest Joshua.
And I think he still does to this day. I don't think he's been kicked out. And yeah, I know you and I kind of disagree on that, but I don't think he's been kicked out yet.
Well, I think that when the woman clothed in the sun in Revelation 12 gave birth to the man-child who'd rule the nations, that kind of corresponds.
I know. But you and I disagree. Won't talk about it here.
Yeah, but again, that's not a theological hill I'll die on, so I'm not going to argue with you.
No, me neither. It's just sort of the opinion I've formed over many, many years. But I know you formed yours for a good reason too. And you listening, you probably got your own thing. You're both wrong. But here's the thing: a connected story. Now, the Red Wing Saga, I write about a number of families that are very closely related to the throne in England. I also write about some families that just are ordinary people. So there's a wide variety of characters in the Red Wing Saga, but most of it is historical. Most of that book is based in actual things that happened, and I interpret them through the actions and opinions of my main characters. Now, a recent story just came out. If you've been paying attention, you know that Her Majesty the Queen, Elizabeth II, passed away last September. I think on the 22nd or something like that. At least her funeral was on the 22nd. I may be wrong on that. But in September, which the reason I bring up the 22nd is because that's the equinox.
Yeah.
Her son, Charles, has been king ever since, but he has not yet been anointed. Now, why is that a big deal? Because historically, going back thousands of years, the idea of kingship coming down from above requires that you be anointed. We see it with David.
Yeah.
That he was anointed to be king. This has continued to this day. The idea that someone who sits on a controlling throne must be approved of by God. Therefore, he must be anointed. Charles hasn't been anointed yet. The crown is just part of it, but the anointing, that's what matters. Well, his anointing oil has been made in a different formula than anything before.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. He wanted it to be non-animal based. They've been using ambergris and things like that from sea animals and land animals, and they're no longer doing that. This is made from olive oil that grew on an olive tree next to the late Prince Philip's mother, who's buried on the Mount of Olives.
Now, Prince Philip's mother was Greek nobility, wasn't she? Greek royalty.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And she was married to the king who was kicked out when Philip, in his little orange crate as a baby, was secreted out along with everybody else. They got away. But his mother became a nun.
After his father died. Yeah.
And when she died, she requested to be buried on the Mount of Olives, and it was granted to her. So the patriarch in Jerusalem, the Orthodox patriarch, has supervised the blessing in Jerusalem and the recipe for and the construction of this holy oil that is olive oil plus some scents and things like that. This olive oil links Charles to Jerusalem. Now that's important because there's a song that implies that London is the new Jerusalem. Yeah,
this green and pleasant land. That is really, really interesting. Yeah, ambergris and something from the gland of a civet.
Yeah, we don't want that. Yeah. That was supposedly the animal that gave us all COVID. Remember that?
Or the pangolin, or the snake, or
it was one of those.
Yeah, it was one of those.
Never mind.
Yeah, look over there.
Well, that's changed now. The news story is that it was a lab leak, but that we digress. Yes, he is going to be using this holy oil. Very
interesting that the Orthodox Patriarch of Jerusalem is the one. His beatitude, Patriarch Theophilos III, the most senior Christian figure in Israel, alongside an Anglican archbishop, the Most Reverend Hossam Naum. And it will be flown in secret.
Yes. Can you imagine if TSA goes, we can't, I'm sorry.
There's more than 4 ounces here.
Yeah. I'm betting it's going to be on a private
diplomatic
plane.
pouch, probably.
Yeah, probably.
So,
but
anyway.
I think this is really, really interesting because the idea that a future king of England would one day, there are some who believe that the future king of England could be a candidate for the Antichrist. I'm not saying Charles is.
Yeah, no,
I don't think he is.
There's a fellow out there who, and a number of you, thankful, and we appreciate when you send us suggestions and tips. We don't, we try to go through as many of them as we can. We don't see everything.
I read everything you send me. I don't always respond, but I do read everything, and I stop and I pray for you, and I thank the Lord that you took the time to write.
And we troll the news for hours a day.
Oh,
but even then, we don't catch everything. I've got a number of people who've sent me links to an interview by a messianic author named Tim Cohen, who's got a book that's been out for a while. In fact, I've got a copy of it done in PDF from years ago called The Antichrist and a Cup of Tea.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I've got a copy of
that is suddenly getting attention again because of Charles ascending to the throne.
Do you know that is why, those of you who've read the Red Wings saga, you understand this scene, or you may remember it, that there's a scene where Ratziel is having a discussion with the humans who follow him, and he's threatening them in a very sort of left-handed way. Mm-hmm. It isn't a direct threat, but it's obvious that if they don't do what he wants them to, they will die. And he's sitting there drinking a cup of tea. That's why I had him sitting there drinking a cup of tea. And then he disappears and the teacup falls to the floor.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, it's an interesting theory. I don't believe Charles.
I don't think he is either,
no.
nor do I think William is. I think that, well, at least I pray he's not. Someone will be, and this will be someone that everybody agrees is, he comes out of nowhere, I think, and just like, oh my goodness, he's the best thing ever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't think that's Charles.
No, because we are told that even Christ's elect, would be deceived if that were possible.
Right. That's why I wrote in my book, Bad Moon Rising, that I believe the Antichrist will present himself to the world as a Jew.
Possibly. Or I fulfill every dream you've got.
Right.
Every Messiah you want to call me, I'm that.
Yeah.
I'm that thing. In fact, I'm also from another planet. I was the one who seeded you here long ago, and I've just come back to take care of my kids.
Right.
I'm the absent watchmaker that the evolutionary guys talk about. That's me.
There are so few clues about the Antichrist that you can make a case for a number of different types. Joel Richardson argues, as does Walid Shubat, argues for an Islamic Antichrist. I think that's too obvious. I don't see any reality where the Jews are deceived into welcoming a Muslim as their Messiah. I think the whole point, going back to what we said at the beginning about the amount of attention paid to the Jews by the fallen realm, is that they want to destroy them. These are the people that God called out from Abraham almost 4,000 years ago. And even though they make up such a small percentage of the world's population, 14 million out of, 8 billion, they want to see them destroyed. But even more than that, they would want to see them welcome the false Messiah, which is why I suggest that the role for Islam in the end times is to serve as cannon fodder to deceive the Jews into welcoming a perceived savior as the Messiah.
That could be possible. It's just hard to say.
Right.
Again, the Lord has shrouded these things in a mysterious veil because he is the best general ever.
Yeah.
He is the bestest. There is a sort of connected story that I'm going to talk about, and that has to do with a comet that's headed our way. If we're going to talk about eschatology, a comet that was just discovered, C/2023 A3, which is called Tsuchinshan Atlas, noted just recently by the Atlas telescope. And it is presently between Saturn and Jupiter. Now, Saturn and Jupiter just had a little, they're in the sky right now, but Saturn and
Venus.
Yeah, I know, I'm getting there.
Gotcha.
They're often seen in the sky with Venus. But interestingly enough, Saturn and Venus just had a little kiss. Or was it Jupiter and Venus?
Jupiter and Venus.
Jupiter and Venus. Thank you very much. Sorry about that. Jupiter and Venus just had a little kiss, which means they got close enough that it looks like they're actually touching.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they're not touching. They're, thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of miles apart in the orbit. But the way the orbits work is that from our vantage point, it looked like they were really close. Now, that's where this comet is between Saturn and Jupiter. It's headed this way at 180,000 plus miles per hour. It will get here on, I'm not kidding, October 13th of 2024.
10/13, huh?
Of 2024. Will it get this close? Don't know. I don't know that it's said that it will look like a star in the sky. In fact, it may even outshine many of the stars in the sky. So we'll be watching for that. But there's also a connected story to that. We had the DART mission, NASA, taking out the asteroid, in Bruce Willis style, sort of.
Right.
That NASA is now saying was a success because they see particles in orbit that clearly came away from it, but it was diverted by how many minutes?
33 minutes.
33
Changed the orbit by 33 minutes.
Yes.
Nudge, nudge, wink, wink.
Yes. So we've got a comet coming in on 10/13, which is the anniversary of the Templar founding. We've got the anniversary, the day they were destroyed by King Philip the Fair. That's right. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. And gosh, that was over 700 years ago.
It was, yes. Yeah, the Templars were taken out by King Philip the Fair of France because they had all the money. And
these guys are too rich and they're telling me what to do. I don't like that.
Yeah, it was Friday, October 13th, which is also, it's theorized the reason that Friday the 13th is supposed to be bad luck, of 1307. Yeah, I remember we moved to Shelbyville, Indiana, and we were there on the 700th anniversary. In fact, the Indiana Knights Templar had a gathering at the lodge there in Shelbyville.
The guy that was our landlord was the head of them.
He was a 33rd degree Scottish Rite Freemason.
I know. It was so funny. But yes, this asteroid was nudged, wink, wink, by 33 minutes. It's thought that if a comet or another asteroid were to come close, that we don't have to worry, we don't have to sweat it. NASA's going to take care of us. But an article at the Daily Mail, one of my favorite sources for news, because they give you a wide variety of news from all over the world, and many of their pieces are investigative. They're actually journalistic gold. They were going after Hunter Biden when nobody else was.
Right, except for the New York Post, and New York Post had been deplatformed by social media.
So I love to go to the Daily Mail. Well, they've got an article there that says how to survive a killer asteroid impact just in case NASA fails. And it's sort of, like put your head between your knees and kiss your goodbye. Unless you are in an expensive underground bunker. Let's just talk about the book of Revelation.
Yeah.
Please, may the rocks fall on us. But this massive rock, it said in the article, don't worry, we're mostly water here on this planet, so it's likely going to hit in the water if something does happen. So let's talk about Wormwood, Tom Horn's book.
Right. That's an interesting thought.
And his vision.
Yeah. He had a dream, which he described as being as vivid as the dream of Pope Benedict's resignation.
Which he got right. Well, the Lord got right because he gave that vision to Tom.
Right.
If you've never heard Tom's story, we'll see if we can find the interview where he actually talked about it on Skywatch TV. But basically, when he was a young man, he and Nita were newly married. She thought he died. She woke up and he was not breathing. She thought he was dead. The fact is that he had been called to the throne. His spirit was in the throne room, and his body was not functioning.
Right.
Well, the Lord gave him a whole bunch of information, but all Tom could remember at the time is hearing this idea that you will not remember this. The Lord saying, you won't remember this. And he was begging, please let me remember.
Yeah.
All he could really remember at the time was that he was there and what it was like.
They're just more real than real. We've heard that from other people who've had that experience.
Everybody says that. It's more real than real. But since then, this information he was given in one big piece at the time, bits of it have been revealed to him.
Mm-hmm. And the wormwood strike, which the word that he remembered when he awoke from this horrific dream of cataclysm was Apophis.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the name of the asteroid that is coming to Earth, hopefully coming past Earth rather than to Earth, but that's in April of 2029, April 13th of 2029.
And if you back up...
Yeah, you back up 3.5 years, then you're at October of 2025. There are some who believe that Apophis, or wormwood rather, arrives at the midpoint of the tribulation. Now, it's not in the Bible, so this is speculative.
You sort of infer it from what's in the text.
Right. If that is true, and then you back up 3.5 years, the first half of the tribulation, that falls right at the very end of the Feast of Tabernacles, which was the most important feast, is the most important feast, really, in the Jewish calendar. It's the 7-day festival where 70 bulls were slaughtered in the ancient world, and scholars have said, well, this is kind of represents the 70 gods of the nations, which are basically the fallen angels that God delegated to administer. They weren't fallen when he gave them the job.
Right.
But seeing the end from the beginning, he knew they would be tempted into this. It was sort of a test and a trap, as you put it in the Red Wing Saga. They allowed themselves to be worshipped as gods. So they will be judged. And Jewish eschatology still holds that to this day, that when Messiah ben David arrives, succeeding Messiah ben Joseph, or resurrected from Messiah ben Joseph into Messiah ben David, he judges the 70 nations, meaning all the other nations except Israel, and their angels, and they get thrown into Gehenna, and then he sets up his kingdom in this world. And, Israel is restored to its former greatness during the time of David.
We have that book. We have Wormwood in our Gilbert House store, but you can also get it, of course, from skywatchtvstore.com. Right. It's a really, really good book. I wrote the first part of it, and I think Donna and Allie finished it. Tom had asked me if I would write a fictional opening for it. He didn't ask me to write a fictional ending, so he was good enough to just go to them. But yes, it is something similar to Deep Impact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This whole idea that something's coming. The leaders of the world are aware of it. They're trying to prepare for it, but they don't want everybody to panic and the markets to crash, which they would. But when Tom had this vision, this dream of wormwood, of Apophis, he told us, I remember this so clearly, he said it was like an undulating snake with horns.
Which is how Apophis was described in Egyptian cosmology. He was the god of chaos.
Yes.
Like
so
Leviathan.
It was a dragon.
Yeah. We will see what happens. Apophis is supposed to miss the Earth based on the projections, or at least what NASA has let us know. But in the documentary that Josh Peck did on
which is
Ragnarok,
so good.
yes. Ragnarok, he spent some time with a couple of researchers who point out that it's possible that the math that's been used is wrong, that the actual value of pi is not what we've been taught, 3.14159, et cetera, that it's off by a couple of digits, and that's significant when you're dealing with such vast, the space that has to be crossed by this thing. But also there's another fellow who says that NASA is deliberately fudging the numbers and sharing false information. And the guy who did this is not a loon. He's a billionaire tech investor. And I'm forgetting his name now. It'll come to me probably during the break or something. But anyway, the point is, whatever happens in April of 2029, God has seen the end from the beginning. And our futures are secure if you've trusted in Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Well, we do need to take a break, as you said. But when we come back, I would like to continue talking about eschatology and some of the news articles that have been popping up that seem to indicate we are very, as Arch Obler used to say in his radio show as he opened it up, it is later than you think.
Don't go away. PID Radio continues. Prepare for spiritual war by arming yourself with information. Take advantage of these specials through March that dig deep into the Bible to help you make sense of the chaos around us. First, our Veneration Bundle, our 2 co-authored books plus the travelogue DVDs from our Israel tours. An $85 value, just $45 plus shipping and handling. The Second Coming of Saturn Bundle, featuring my book and the 13-part companion DVD, a $50 value for just $35 plus shipping and handling. The This Is War special offer, featuring the Second Coming of Saturn, 4 DVDs, and 7 hours of audio interviews with Bible scholar Dr. Michael Heiser, a $145 value for just $75 plus shipping and handling. And the Gilbert Fiction Collection, all 8 novels in Sharon's Red Wing Saga series plus my 2 novels, a $200 value for just $140 plus shipping and handling. These offers are available through March only at our online store, gilberthouse.org/store. And again, we thank you for your prayers and support. Welcome back to PID Radio. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I am Sharon Gilbert. Don't know where you've been during the break. We went outside. We played a game of softball, and it lasted about 5 seconds in here. But we do want to
editing. Yes.
As promised, build barn better.
We're taking a slogan from the World Economic Forum and improving on it. Rather than building back better, we're building barn better. Our 30 by 40 foot pole barn.
Great building.
Yeah. And on a concrete slab built there by the original owners of the home. Mm-hmm. We've mainly just used it to store stuff that we didn't want to bring into the house. But it's a usable space, 1,200 square feet. We just need to insulate. We're going to replace the storm windows. It's got a couple of windows in the building, but they're just storm windows. They're not actual windows. So insulate new windows, run the power all around the inside of the building, and then install a mini split for heating and cooling.
We have a friend who owns a construction company called Christ Powered Construction. Mm-hmm. And he and his wife are going to come out here, and we've gotten to know them really well. They live in the area, and he and his wife are going to be doing a lot of the electrical work and the windows and things like that. Mm-hmm. They're also going to seal the concrete slab that's in there so it won't be absorbing moisture all the time, at least not from the inside. So if you spill your coffee,
it'll bead up and I can just wipe it up with a paper towel.
Won't that be great? Like it never happened.
Right.
So
we'll put a couple of areas in there. For one for Unraveling Revelation, another area where I can continue to produce the 5 and 10 daily news analyses for Skywatch TV, and then maybe some teachings, or maybe a series of short videos addressing single questions.
I love that idea, and we will recoup the space here in the house and actually be able to have a couple of guest rooms. Yeah. Won't that be nice?
So right now, our entire home all of our spare bedrooms anyway, guest bedrooms are taken up as office and or studio space. Yeah. So Build Barn Better is our project, and if you're so led, you can find a red donate button at pidradio.com or gilberthouse.org. You'll also find a space there on the More tab at our mobile app, which leads you to a donate page, and we thank you.
We do, and I understand that. Look, times are hard right now.
Yeah.
Not everybody has the extra money to give, and not everybody's going to be led to give. Hey, you know what? The Lord's got a few people, and that's going to be enough.
Yes.
But if you would pray for us, pray for this project, we would so appreciate it. Pray for us as we go to Israel. We're going to be gone most of the month of March, leaving about the 14th and coming back April 2nd or something like that. So we'll be gone about 2.5 weeks.
And while we're there, while we're there, we're going to be shooting some video. But
and the big announcement is
the big announcement. Unfortunately, Messianic Rabbi Zev and Lynn Porat were going to accompany us ever since our tour in 2019. Zev's teachings at, in Jerusalem at the Mount of Precipice, where Jesus was nearly thrown off the mountain after preaching in Nazareth. He had an emergency. One of his staff members in his ministry in Israel had an emergency, and so Zev's needing to cover for him for several weeks during the time the tour is there. So Zev and Lynn had to back out. But Doug Van Dorn has graciously agreed to step in on such short notice. God bless the pastors covering his pulpit for the next few weeks.
Yes, thank you. And the teachers who are covering for his wife, Janelle.
Yeah, Janelle, who's going to take the time away, and they'll be joining us. In fact, they're coming with us early to do some video.
Secret filming.
Yeah, some video work at some of the megalithic sites in Israel. Israel has got more megalithic sites per square mile, especially on the Golan Heights, which is significant because that was the ancient kingdom of Bashan. Doug is the author of Giants, Sons of the Gods, first published in 2013. He's just released a revised and expanded edition. So he added some stuff, including a map of the dolmens on the Golan Heights. But in his 2013 edition, he was the first to point out the Serpent Mound of Bashan.
Yeah, the one that we found and went, oh.
Yeah. In 2019, we spotted it on Google Earth, and I said, surely somebody has seen this. We can't be the first ones to have spotted. It's a quarter of a mile from Gilgal Rephaim.
It's huge.
Covered with megalithic tombs. The Israel Antiquities Authority counted like 140 megalithic burials on the back of this serpent-shaped ridge that's 3 times longer and 4 times higher than the Great Serpent Mound in Ohio. And the only person I found who's made any mention of it at all is Doug Van Dorn.
Uh-huh.
And we know Doug.
I know. In fact, he's done a documentary.
Yes.
That includes that.
Yes, he's part of a 4-part documentary series called Giants and Gods, I think, or Gods and Giants, The Watchers in the Nephilim. It's supposed to come out on the Inspiration Network.
Well,
in fact, I thought it was supposed to be out already, but
we'll
apparently,
find out.
Yeah.
We'll find out.
But anyway, the Inspiration Network is producing it, and Doug's book was really the source text for the documentary. And they were over there a couple of years ago, actually, and did some filming on top of that Serpent Mound. So we're going to go there, and we'll get some video. But Doug will be joining us, which is good because we've got 3 buses. So we just wanted to make sure everybody felt like they had access to ask questions because you spend a decent amount of time on those buses. So we can't be on all 3. We will rotate through, but Doug
we'll try to visit.
Great resource, and of course, he's done some really fascinating stuff. His presentations for the most recent Skywatch TV virtual conference on archaeoastronomy.
Oh yes, that field fascinates me.
Right. Well, he and Judd Burton have been working on the archaeoastronomy of the Serpent Mound of Bashan. So we're looking forward to picking Doug's brain.
Speaking of Judd Burton and Brian Godawa. And Doug Van Dorn and you, the Iron and Myth show. Yeah. Derek and I are sort of tossing around the possibility of a future Israel tour that's all Iron and Myth. We can get enough people that, it would make it worth the while for all 4.
Well, if we could get 3 busloads, that would be enough.
Yeah.
So we got about 120 coming with us on this tour.
Yeah.
And if we could do that, because Brian came with us in 2018 with Mike and Drina Heiser.
Yeah. Oh, we miss Mike Heiser.
Brian and Kimberly Godawa were with us on that. But if we could get do an Iron and Myth tour of Israel, that would be.
I know.
We'll
talk about that. Yeah. We will talk about that. And we are going again, by the way, next March.
Yep.
And you'll find that listed at Aaron Lipkin's lipkintours.com site. We haven't officially announced our other host
special guest yet. Yeah.
Yeah, because we've heard it's 99% sure from them, but I just want to make sure before we
put it out there.
But Aaron went ahead and put it on there. So if you're curious, you can go and see.
Yeah, the tour will start March 30th of 2024.
That's going to be awesome. So, but before the break, I said that I want to continue this apocalyptic discussion. And I think one place I can go with that is the fact that Russia just backed out of the START II treaty. That's a nuclear proliferation treaty.
Right.
That is renewed, I think, every 2 years or something like that. The original START treaty sort of sunset, and then along came Obama, and he arranged.
Along came Barry.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. He negotiated the START II treaty.
Or they call it the New START.
Yeah. The
restart.
Yeah. The restart. And of course, Russia is now saying that they want to back out of it because that essentially would hamstring any possibility of using a strategic nuclear strike.
Mhm.
Now, let me tell you about Steadfast Noon.
Oh, yes.
This is an exercise held every year, every fall, by the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO. So the NATO members get together and they rehearse what would happen if there were to be a nuclear exchange with another country. They practice something called nuclear sharing.
Nuclear sharing.
Nuclear sharing. Essentially, it allows pilots from non-nuclear countries to fly and trained. They're trained and they practice this during these exercises. They will fly a plane, one of ours, either an F-15, an F-16, an F-35, or an F-22 that are nuclear capable and theoretically are carrying a nuclear payload, and they are trained in nuclear military maneuvers. Now, I'm not really sure. I don't fly a plane. I have no idea what the difference is, but that's what this is all about. Steadfast Noon is practicing a nuclear war.
It's closer than it has ever been.
It is closer than you think.
Yeah. Russia's official military doctrine has, for some time, said that they reserve the right to use tactical nuclear weapons if they feel that Russia is being threatened. And of course, last week, Monday into Tuesday, there was a series of drones. There were a series of drones that hit targets deep inside Russia. One got within 60 miles of Moscow. Didn't cause any significant damage, no injuries, but just sort of a reminder that Ukraine, which didn't take credit for the drones, but they said, but we reserve the right to do it. We're not saying we did it, but we could have. And if we had done it, it would be fine. That's kind of what Ukraine is saying. This is slowly, and we've been saying this for months, turning into World War III. In fact, as we mentioned a couple of weeks ago, there's a French historian, Emmanuel Todd, who's a respected historian. He predicted the fall of the Soviet Union 12 years before it happened. So this is not a guy just with a blog. Okay, he's actually got he's a scholar. He might have one, but he's a scholar who studies and looks at and then tries to discern what's going on. He said this is already World War III.
I've been saying that for a long time. In
fact, I think that's why now we're seeing the narrative change on the origins of the pandemic. It's okay to blame China now because China's siding with Russia.
And we're going to be involved in that war with them as well. I think Russia and China and possibly South America.
Yep.
But
the global South, with the exception of Australia and New Zealand, is aligning with the BRICS nations.
Yes.
Russia, India, China, South Africa, Brazil.
Yes. Now, mind you, this Steadfast Noon exercise is actually a violation of a treaty that the United States signed, the Non-Proliferation Treaty. However, the language is so vague in parts that we somehow were grandfathered in. So the U.S. is not breaking the letter of the law,
just the
but
spirit
the spirit of the law.
Well,
and
we're really
also,
good at that.
The other thing about the U.S. is that if NATO decides to engage in a real war, not just an exercise, but actually send pilots out with nuclear missiles on board, that would only happen if two people in the world say yes. One is the U.S. president. The other one is the Prime Minister of England, of Great Britain. The UK.
So the president and the prime minister can basically say, we're at war and we're using nukes?
Yes. And what's so interesting for me about that is it bypasses the head of NATO. It also involves two partners, the eagle and the lion, that are in Scripture. Now, whether or not it actually refers to those two as eagle and lion, I don't know, but I've always found it really interesting that we get the eagle leaving the lion. And if they're running the world, which it seems to be, Russia is accusing the West, and when I say the West, capital W, read the U.S. and the U.K.
right.
as the West, because he's accusing the West of taking out Nord Stream.
Yeah, and China at the UN Security Council last week echoed that call. We need an investigation, and I think the Chinese, we talked about Seymour Hersh, the investigative journalist, Pulitzer Prize winning, by the way. So again, not just some random guy with a blog who's got a really good track record of protecting his sources, which is why sources will deliver information to him that they won't go to any.
But he doesn't go just with one source. If they tell him a story, he investigates it before he actually goes to press.
His conclusion was that the explosives that destroyed Nord Stream were planted by U.S. Navy divers from the diving and salvage unit at Panama City, Florida. Because if they'd used Navy SEALs, which is the kind of thing that the Navy SEALs do, but because they're a special operations unit, Congress would have to be briefed. And so you brief Congress, there's a risk that somebody in Congress or a staff member in Congress is going to leak that to the press. So to keep it on the QT, they use this other unit that doesn't normally do this kind of work because it's sort of off the books. It's like when Lieutenant Colonel Dan Marvin, who's gone home to be with the Lord now, he was featured in that History Channel series, The Men Who Killed Kennedy, describing how he was approached by guys in suits and dark glasses one day when he was at Fort Benning, I believe. Anyway, he was a Green Beret, a Green Beret captain. And they approached him.
Who had worked with a stealth unit.
Yes, on a project inside Cambodia, which was not supposed to be allowed. It's basically, if you or your men get caught, we will disavow all knowledge and responsibility.
It's like Mission Impossible.
Yeah. He was, according to Colonel Marvin, he was approached by these guys who wanted him to carry out an assassination, which is kind of what special operations guys can sometimes be ordered to do, except in this case, it was against a United States citizen. And he said, no, I didn't sign up for that. So anyway, he said they left, went and talked to another guy, and this guy went with them, and then suddenly that guy disappeared from the duty roster. And then a while later, a fellow named Bruce Wayne Pitzer, who was with the U.S. Navy, the guy who was responsible for the...
he was on the autopsy of JFK's body in Washington.
He fell out of a window or something. Basically, he was ruled a suicide. But anyway, Colonel Marvin said that's what happened. Well, it seems that this is kind of what happened to those, according to Hersh. I'm reading between the lines here, but that seems to be what he's describing with the use of these U.S. Navy and salvage divers. Now, there has been no attention at all paid to this here in the American press. European press, there have been a couple of newspapers that have picked up on it and cited it. Others are just openly ridiculing Hersh. He's using anonymous sources. Well, yeah, because, if they give their names, those guys, their careers are ruined or they're dead, one or the other. But I think behind the scenes, most of the players in the know what's going on. Who benefits is the key question. Who benefited from the destruction of the Nord Stream pipeline?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Not Russia, not Germany. So who's that leave? Who's selling the natural gas to Europe right now to make up the shortfall?
Yes.
United States.
Yes, absolutely. Also, a huge lithium mine has been discovered.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody's going, yay, we finally got the lithium we need for all the batteries and things, except it's in Iran.
Yeah.
Iran has signed a 25-year cooperation pact with China.
Yep. Isn't that hilarious?
It is hilarious.
Green energy means we've got to do a deal with Iran.
Oh, rats. Now, here's an interesting thing. At the same time that Steadfast Noon, was taking place in Europe, at the Johns Hopkins Center for Health, a tabletop exercise was ongoing. Actually, this was at a meeting in Belgium. So not at Johns Hopkins, but they sponsored it along with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. It's called Catastrophic Contagion.
Catastrophic Contagion.
Pandemic tabletop exercise that I've not been able to find a whole lot on. Let me see if I can.
So they're looking at an avian flu as the vector here?
It's very difficult to say because, again, the past tabletop exercises, I've been able to find the slides, the videos they watched, the actual video of their discussions, just about everything. I can't find a whole lot on this one. So I'm going to keep digging in that. But as we have H5N1 avian flu going around and killing a whole bunch of birds and mammals, I think it's becoming obvious that H5N1 is changing. It's becoming more communicable, and it is now able to infect a wide variety of animals, meaning the likelihood that it will cross over in a way to humans that makes it highly transmissible human to human is more of a scenario.
Right.
It has killed a little girl in Cambodia. It has now infected 2 other members of her family. The question is, was it transmitted from her to them, or did they all catch it from a bird?
Health officials in Cambodia say they did not spread human. It did not spread human to human. It was.
But I've heard that for years, that it's not spreading human to human.
Yeah.
Now they are saying it's been circulating in Cambodia for a couple of decades, which may be one reason that if it is human to human, that it's gotten there.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't mean that tomorrow we're going to wake up and suddenly there's an avian flu outbreak worldwide. But we also didn't know that there was a SARS-CoV-2 waiting out there. It is later than you think. I think the horses and the riders are running through the world, racing through the world, galloping through the world once again on one of their peak missions.
They're testing their leashes. Testing their leashes. Yeah.
They are.
The World Health Organization has only confirmed about 850 cases of H5N1 over the last 20 years. But the reason they're concerned about it is that of those 850 cases, 450 people have died, which means the infection fatality rate is more than 50%.
Yes.
Compare that to COVID, which is 0.02. So, or 0.2, which is like a bad case of the seasonal flu, something like that.
Yeah.
So this is why they watch it. This is why Sharon watches this, because if it does suddenly become transmissible easily from human to human, it could really be a bad thing.
It really could be.
Now, the Spanish flu, the Great Flu of 1918, that was an H1N1, right?
Yes.
Okay, so not H5N1.
No, H5N1, interestingly enough, I wrote about in the Armageddon strain.
Right.
That it had been altered in a lab in an experiment to see how infectious it could become human to human. And then it got into the wild and went wild. So lab leak is what it's written in the Armageddon strain. We've talked about republishing that. It's no longer published. There are some old copies from years ago because it was published in 2004, 2005.
Right. But I make reference to events in the Armageddon strain, in the God Conspiracy, and the follow-up book I'm working on now, The God Game.
Yeah, I'm working on a follow-up book that actually brings in the Red Wing individuals from current times. So it will reference the Armageddon strain too.
And the God Game is doing that too. So.
I know. Hey, you're beating me to it, aren't we? Huh?
You write faster than I do.
I don't know about that. I've been so busy researching. I remember talking to Drew Graffia about this sometime a couple of years ago. That I said, Derek and I often refer to ourselves as slugs, but when I look back on the amount of material that the Lord has helped us produce in the 18 years since 1820. No, it's over 20 years because we wrote the first books in 2002. Yeah. So it's over 20 years that we've been doing this. And the Lord has helped us to create a lot of stuff. But I do feel like a slug. And I was talking to Drew about it. I said that I feel like all I'm doing is feeding. I'm not creating anything. I'm not making a meal for someone else. I am just constantly eating information. And I'm still in that phase. So eventually the Lord's going to say, okay, time to vomit.
Well, that's kind of how I felt at the beginning of the writing process for the second coming of Saturn. It was kind of a tough slog because I felt like, I'm really having to work hard to pull it. But then it suddenly reached a tipping point where, okay, now I know what I've got to say. And all of this, and it came out very quickly once I got into a habit of writing. And maybe that's it. Maybe I just need, as for me anyway, just get into that routine. You're going to sit down now and you're going to write 1,000 words and just get the word count out there, because I think the process sort of kicks whatever is blocking the mechanism out of the way. But you can't just constantly create, because after a point, the well runs dry.
It really does.
Yeah.
In my information consumption phase, one of the things I do a lot of is watch documentaries. I watched one yesterday on volcanoes. It was fascinating. It had sort of dull moments, and that's just an editing thing. I think there was one passage that took place in the hottest place in the world. It's part of Africa, and essentially it's a place that has lots and lots of human bones, but they've been blown apart because they're so old and fossilized. I was watching this documentary, and it mainly follows religious practices connected to volcanoes. And one of those volcanoes is in North Korea. I had not realized that this volcano in North Korea is considered the source of the North Korean people, the birthplace of North Korea as we know it. It's a place of worship. Kim Il-sung is the founder of North Korea. And Kim Il-sung is, according to the legend, he was raised in a log cabin near the lake, the crater lake of this volcano. And there is a pilgrimage site. It is supposed to be the actual log cabin, and you can go and visit, and you can leave your offerings. There are various other statues of him and his family, the Kim family, where you can go and leave your offerings, because these individuals, the Kim family, they're worshipped as gods.
Yeah. Dear leader. Well, that's a practice that goes back thousands of years.
Yes, and one of the other volcanoes, and I'm sorry, I can't remember which one it was. I need to rewatch this whole documentary. It was a volcano, again, with pageantry, pagan pageantry, because the king of this little island was represented by a sacrificial offering that in this pageant, this box of goods, and buried in the ground at a specific spot, represented the marriage, the sacred marriage between the king and the goddess of the sea. In their belief system, the king who began their humanity, their tribe, the founding member, had a sacred relationship with the goddess of the sea at that very point, but they had a child. The child was a demon that lived in the volcano.
Oh.
So they had to appease the demon, they had to appease the goddess, and they had to recreate that moment of conception.
I see. So you've got, again, the human and the divine coming together and producing a demonic offspring. Yeah, that sounds like Genesis 6.
Doesn't it, though?
Yeah.
And a number of these volcanic tribal recreations in the documentary are following that same theme. So you've got a human plus a god or a goddess.
Very interesting.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, it wasn't Rodin, although it could have been. But looking at these volcanoes, a number of these volcanoes, it is said by the locals that they sort of rumble now and then, and they're all over the world. But the day is coming very soon when the god or the demon will reawaken, and it will consume the world.
Well, again, sort of a prophecy of what's going to happen in Revelation 9 when things open up and the king of those in the bottomless pit, Shemiyaza, Abaddon, Apollyon, and his minions come forth and destroy, torment those without the seal of God in their forehead.
It's all. I've always pictured that moment as a single portal that opens, but it may be portals all over the world.
That would make sense.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be a single point.
No, it doesn't.
Especially when you're dealing with a multidimensional or an entity that operates in more dimensions than we do.
Yeah, and they will have 5 months in which to terrify and torment those without the mark of the Lord.
Mm-hmm. Well,
boy, that's sort of a downbeat way to end this.
Got let's see.
Do you have a happy thing to end with?
Well,
happy things are nice.
Yeah, I was looking for something happy here, but what was the story? Well, the AI that'll repossess your car for you. That's kind of funny, but not really. There
are AIs that are the AI art is everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I think graphic artists are starting to get really upset about that because these representations look pretty darn good. But here's a way to end this. Going back to King Charles. An AI was asked to imagine the coronation day. It's amazing looking art, but it's got a golden coach, and there will be a golden coach from the 18th century that's included in the actual coronation. But this coach is drawn by swans, and it's the size of a van. It's big. Mm-hmm. It's like a minibus. But they had children drinking beer.
In the AI
In the
depiction.
AI world, yes.
Well.
Sydney, or whatever you want to call this AI, who clearly wants to picture human beings.
They are fans of the football.
Ah, yes.
Hooligans.
Who knew?
That reminds me, there's a fellow who decided to task an AI artist with creating images of all of the United States presidents, all 46, well, I guess 45, because Grover Cleveland got in twice. Anyway, all of the presidents of the United States looking cool and with mullets. And he put them together in a poster titled "The United States of America." You can find it on social media if you want to search. It is hilarious.
So funny. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. Joe Biden with a mullet. Like, yeah, okay.
We laugh about this and we think, okay, this is just an algorithm, but what if it isn't?
Mm.
What if there are a number of actual sentient AIs that are becoming fit extensions?
That's the question, isn't it? Because as we've said on this program and elsewhere for years, the researchers doing this kind of AI research don't really know what's happening inside those neural networks. They call them black boxes, and they really mean that. We feed in data, we get data out. If we don't like the data that we get out, we put different data in, and that we don't know what's going on in there. Could be something is actually in there.
Well, I'd say that's very, very possible. But I will try to find out more on the exercise Catastrophic Contagion for you and see who all... I did find a site as I'm looking here trying to find... There are some videos that I'll see if I can watch those and find out exactly what's going on, and we will discuss that next weekend, which will be our final PID radio until April.
Right, because we will be in Israel after that, so you'll have to make do with reruns until then.
There are lots of reruns. You can catch up.
Go to the app and look at the PID Radio Classics in there, which we've got everything from 2005 through 2009.
You can search.
You can search.
You can search for Tom Horn.
Right. There's a search function in the app where we tag any episode that's got a guest. So you can find all the interviews with Tom Horn, L.A. Marzulli, Michael Heiser, whatever, and bring those up.
You can look for Dan Marvin.
Yeah, we got those in there. So we're going through and uploading the archives as time allows. I'm going to start, I know I've been saying this for weeks now. I'll start on that today, uploading prophecy interviews from the prophecy conferences that we've been at over the years.
Oh, yeah.
Because we got some great guests on those. And we got a couple of, well, of course, make sure you're here tomorrow as we study the Bible, the Gilbert House Fellowship. We are working through some of the Psalms written by David about the time of David's coronation. And tomorrow night, View from the Bunker. The interview is one that I recorded with Dr. Craig Olson about 18 months ago.
Oh, yeah.
Craig
Love him.
Is he's the Dean of Biblical Studies at Trinity Southwest University, which is the school where Dr. Stephen Collins heads up their archaeology department, and they are currently on site as we record this, digging at Tal El Hammam in Jordan, which is the site of ancient Sodom. Craig gave a presentation at the first International Symposium on Archaeology in the Bible we attended a year ago, August of 2021. Mm-hmm. He explained why the dates or the ages given for the patriarchs were not meant to be taken literally. And I know this is going to, raise
it's
the hackles.
Controversial. I'm not sure I agree with him, but it's an interesting take on it.
And he makes very clear up front. He said, look, I'm not arguing against the inerrancy of the Bible. He's just, his point is that numbers were not used the same way 4,000 years ago that we use them today.
They were representative.
Right. History was not recorded the same way then as we record it today. So when we impose our framework for understanding numbers and history on a document written 3,500 years ago, we're misinterpreting. And so it's a fascinating conversation. So that'll be tomorrow night's View from the Bunker.
Oh, excellent.
He also explains why Tal El Hammam is a better fit for the description of Sodom in the book of Genesis than the traditional site of Bab Edra, which is southeast of the Dead Sea. So.
Yeah, I agree. So anyway, those of you who are going to Israel with us, we'll see you in about 10, 11, I guess about
2 weeks.
2 weeks, because you're coming in on Monday, aren't you?
Yeah, we're getting there a little early.
We're getting there on Wednesday before that.
Yeah, but 2 weeks until the tour begins the adventure, and we are certainly looking forward to that.
I know we really are. Well, thank you. Thank you for listening, everybody.
And until next time, I'm Derek Gilbert.
I am Sharon Gilbert. Bye-bye, everybody.
PID Radio is an outreach of Gilbert House Ministries, released under Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Follow us online, PIDradio.com, Twitter @PIDradio, or by downloading our free app, PIDradio.com/app, or GilbertHouse.org/app. Join us each week for our Bible study, the Gilbert House Fellowship.